The complete story of Cahokia, America's greatest lost civilization, the city that vanished. Imagine waking up 1,000 years ago, not in New York, not in Washington, not even in Europe. Instead, you open your eyes in a city that stands at the very heart of North America, a city filled with thousands of people. Smoke rises from hundreds of cooking fires. Children run through crowded streets. Farmers carry baskets of freshly harvested corn. Priests climb a giant earthen pyramid as the first rays of sunlight touch the horizon. This place was called Cahokia. More than 1,000 years ago, it was the largest city north of Mexico. At its peak, more than 20,000 people lived here, making it larger than many famous European cities of the same era. Yet today, almost no one remembers its name. No king left behind a written diary. No library survived. No one recorded exactly why this remarkable city disappeared. It simply faded away, leaving behind only mysterious earthen mounds, silent fields, and questions that still puzzle archaeologists today. So, who built Cahokia? How did such a powerful civilization rise in the middle of North America? And why did thousands of people suddenly abandon it? Tonight, we're traveling back nearly 1,000 years to uncover the complete story of America's greatest lost civilization. Long before European explorers crossed the Atlantic, long before Columbus ever sailed west, a thriving civilization was already flourishing along the Mississippi River. Most history books spend countless pages describing ancient Egypt, Rome, and Greece. But very few mention the incredible city that once dominated the American continent. Its story remained hidden beneath layers of earth, waiting hundreds of years to be rediscovered. And that is where our journey truly begins. The rise of America's greatest city. Nearly 1,000 years ago, the land surrounding the Mississippi River was unlike anything we see today. Dense forests stretched for miles. Wild deer wandered through the trees. Massive rivers carried fish in astonishing numbers. The fertile soil produced abundant harvests year after year. For generations, small farming villages quietly existed across this landscape. Families grew corn, beans, and squash. They hunted, fished, and lived peaceful lives close to nature. But sometime around A.D. 1050, something extraordinary happened. One village began growing faster than anyone could have imagined. More families arrived, then more, and even more. Within only a few generations, a small settlement transformed into the greatest city North America had ever seen. No one knows exactly who made this decision. There was no written record, no surviving king's command. Yet thousands of people somehow worked together toward a single dream: to build a city unlike anything the continent had ever known. The heart of Cahokia became an enormous construction project. Day after day, men, women, and perhaps even children carried heavy baskets filled with soil. There were no horses, no oxen, no iron tools. Everything depended on human strength. Basket after basket, load after load, year after year. Eventually, they created one of the largest earthen monuments ever built in human history. Today, we know it as Mound. It still stands more than 100 feet tall. Even now, after nearly 1,000 years, it remains the largest prehistoric earthwork in North America. Standing on its summit, the city's leaders could look across a vast landscape filled with homes, temples, markets, and busy streets. For anyone arriving from distant villages, the sight must have been breathtaking. Cahokia was no ordinary town. It had become the beating heart of an entire civilization. Daily life in Cahokia. As the morning sun climbed above the horizon, Cahokia slowly came alive. Smoke drifted from hundreds of homes. Children laughed as they chased one another through the open plazas. Women prepared meals using freshly ground corn. Hunters returned from the forest carrying deer and wild turkey. Fishermen unloaded baskets filled with fish from the Mississippi River. The city was alive with movement. Every person had a role. Some were skilled farmers. Others crafted beautiful pottery from river clay. Some shaped tools from stone. Others carefully wove baskets and clothing from natural fibers. The marketplace was one of the busiest places in Cahokia. People traveled from distant villages to trade corn, salt, animal skins, copper ornaments, colorful shells from the Gulf Coast, even rare stones brought from hundreds of miles away. Cahokia was not an isolated settlement. It was the center of a vast trading network that connected many different cultures across North America. Most families lived inside sturdy wooden homes. The walls were built from wooden poles covered with woven branches and thick clay. In the center of each home, a fire burned almost every day. It provided warmth during cold winters. It cooked meals. And at night, its soft glow filled the room as families gathered together. Elders told stories about their ancestors. Children listened carefully, learning the traditions that had been passed down for generations. There were no books, no schools. Knowledge lived inside the voices of the people. Every story mattered. Every lesson helped prepare the next generation. Outside, the city continued to grow. New homes appeared almost every year. The great plazas filled with merchants, travelers, and ceremonies. To anyone arriving for the first time, Cahokia must have seemed like the greatest city in the world. The priests, sacred ceremonies, and the secrets of Monk's Mound. As Cahokia continued to grow, its leaders understood something that every great civilization eventually learns. A city could not survive on food alone. It also needed belief. At the center of Cahokia stood its most powerful symbol, a massive earthen pyramid known today as Monk's Mound. Built entirely by human hands, millions of baskets of soil were carried one load at a time. No wheels, no horses, no metal machines, only determination. And thousands of people working together. At the very top stood a large wooden building. Most archaeologists believe this was the home of Cahokia's most important ruler, or perhaps its highest priest. From this sacred place, the city's leaders watched over thousands of people below. To the people of Cahokia, this mound was far more than a hill. It connected the earth to the sky. Not far from Monk's Mound, another mysterious structure stood in silence. Today, archaeologists call it Woodhenge. a giant circle made from tall wooden posts. At first glance, it looked simple, but every post had been placed with astonishing precision. On certain mornings, the rising sun appeared perfectly aligned with specific wooden poles. This allowed Cahokia's leaders to predict the changing seasons. They knew when to plant crops, when to harvest, and when to hold important ceremonies. For the people of Cahokia, the movement of the sun wasn't just science, it was sacred. Every sunrise reminded them that the heavens still watched over their city. The sky itself had become their calendar. As darkness covered the city, the great plaza filled with people. Fires flickered across the open ground. Drums echoed through the night. Their steady rhythm carried across the river valley. Families gathered together, watching priests dressed in colorful feathers and carefully crafted ornaments. Songs filled the air. Smoke rose toward the stars. For those standing in the crowd, it must have felt as though the gods themselves were listening. But beneath the beauty, something else was happening. The city continued to grow. More people arrived every year. More land was cleared. More food was needed. Without realizing it, Cahokia was slowly placing enormous pressure on the world around it. And within only a few generations, that pressure would begin to change everything. The fall of Cahokia. Why did America's greatest city disappear? For nearly 2 centuries, Cahokia stood as the greatest city north of Mexico. Its markets were busy. Its farms produced enormous harvests. Its plazas echoed with ceremonies. Everything seemed to point toward an even greater future. But history has taught us one painful lesson. No civilization lasts forever. Around the early 1200s, something began to change. At first, the signs were almost impossible to notice. Harvests became less reliable. The forests surrounding the city slowly disappeared. Thousands of trees had already been cut down to build houses, walls, fires, and monuments. Without those forests, the land itself began to suffer. Rain washed away valuable soil. Wild animals became harder to find. The once rich environment was no longer as generous as it had been. For the people of Cahokia, life was becoming more difficult with every passing year. Then came another challenge: nature itself. Many archaeologists believe the Mississippi River flooded several times during Cahokia's decline. Powerful storms may have destroyed homes, fields, and food supplies. Others believe long periods of drought followed. Too much water, then too little. For a farming civilization, either disaster could be devastating, as food became scarce. Tension almost certainly increased. Some families may have left in search of better land. Others stayed, hoping conditions would improve, but they never truly did. By the early 1300s, the impossible had happened. America's greatest prehistoric city was slowly emptying. One family left, then another, then hundreds more. The busy marketplace fell silent. The sacred ceremonies ended. Smoke no longer rose from the houses. Children no longer played in the great plaza. The footsteps that had filled Cahokia for centuries simply disappeared. No massive battle has ever been discovered. No evidence suggests a single catastrophic event destroyed the city overnight. Instead, Cahokia seems to have faded away, little by little, until almost no one remained. The greatest city in ancient North America had become a ghost, and for hundreds of years, nature quietly reclaimed what people had once built. Grass covered the plazas, trees surrounded the great mounds. The memory of Cahokia slowly disappeared, waiting for future generations to uncover its forgotten story. Rediscovering a lost civilization. Ending. For hundreds of years, the great city of Cahokia lay hidden beneath the earth. Generations came and went. Native tribes moved across the region. European explorers eventually arrived in North America. Yet almost no one realized that beneath the grassy hills stood the remains of one of the greatest cities the continent had ever known. Many people believed the massive earthen mounds were simply natural hills. Few imagined they had been built by human hands nearly 1,000 years earlier. It wasn't until the 19th century that archaeologists finally began to understand what they had discovered. Every shovel of soil revealed another forgotten chapter. Pieces of pottery, stone tools, copper ornaments, ancient homes, massive wooden buildings. Slowly, the lost city of Cahokia began to tell its story once again. Even today, Cahokia continues to surprise researchers. Many questions remain unanswered. Who ruled this enormous city? Why did thousands of people suddenly choose to leave? How much knowledge has been lost forever? With every new excavation, scientists uncover another clue. But every answer seems to create even more questions. That is the true mystery of Cahokia. It is not simply a forgotten city. It is a reminder that even the greatest civilizations can disappear, not because people forget how to build, but because nature, resources, leadership, and time can change everything. Today, millions of people drive past the region where Cahokia once stood. Most have no idea that beneath their feet, an extraordinary civilization once flourished, a city larger than London at the same time, a place filled with families, dreams, celebrations, and hope. Its people laughed, worked, loved, raised children, built monuments that still stand after nearly 1,000 years. Although their voices have faded into history, their story has not been forgotten. Every visitor who walks among the great earthen mounds becomes part of that story. Because history is not only about kings and battles. Sometimes the greatest stories are the ones that were almost lost forever. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the forgotten world of Cahokia. If you enjoyed uncovering the mysteries of history, don't forget to subscribe, because our next journey will take us to another lost civilization, whose secrets remain buried beneath the sands of time. Until next time, sleep well and keep exploring history.